Welcome to the second edition of Perspectives on the Journey. It was 4 years ago, back in 2017, that we recorded the first session. It was part of an online leadership course focused on the future. Three very distinct aspects of that future. And the third piece of that conversation focused on adapting. The world is shifting very rapidly, and more shifts are on the horizon, the pandemic being a great example of that. How do individuals and organizations adapt in ways that allows resilience and an ability to continue to move forward in the face of all these shifts? It was Hassan El-Buhali, Head of Technology at the MasterCard Foundation, and Ananth Krishnan, TCS CTO, that joined me for that conversation back then. I'm encouraged that Ananth and Hassan were as excited as I am to actually have the conversation again, reflect on the past, and think about the future. And so welcome along with me, Hassan and Ananth. So welcome, Hassan and Ananth. It's a pleasure to have you back. I can't wait to have this conversation again.
Thank you, Frank.
So for the audience, if you remember back in 2017, we talked about perspectives on the journey. It was all about the future, where the world was going, and the practical implications of that to organizations. So what we thought we'd do, and Hassan, it was you that mentioned this, is reflect back on that 2017 discussion and then think about what the world would look like in 4 years from now. So we know that the world is unexpected, is uncertain, is volatile, it's moving very fast. And that really puts emphasis on our need to adapt as individuals, as organizations. So we'll start with you, Ananth. Let's focus on adaptability in the context of 2025.
Frank, the pandemic, unfortunate as it is, and we're all living through it even now, hopefully it will be done by the end of the year, has taught us two things: that things change and change very quickly. So you might have the resilient core thanks to technology and you're at least in business, but there is no saying that this is the last global emergency of some sort. I mean, it could be climate change, it could be natural disasters, it could be all kinds of other things that are around the corner. So adaptability, I think, is a given, and with all the factors that we just discussed, unforeseen competition, crumbling industry boundaries, et cetera, et cetera. So given that, enterprises are now gravitating towards the kind of thinking that I had described 4 years ago, which is what I learned from Clayton Christensen, that there are multiple types of innovation. There is the sustaining innovation, that's the here and now, and there is the big leap improvements in the current jobs that you do, and then there is the disruptives that you have to be able to at least rehearse and adapt and prepare, so if that unforeseen event happens, you are ready and with a plan, a technology platform, a business model, et cetera, et cetera. So that portfolio approach, in fact, we now call it the Clay map in Clay's memory, because unfortunately he passed away just over a year ago. That is central to the way I'm looking at things. It's almost like I'm placing my bets. It's no longer the 3 dimensions, it's actually 4 quadrants of the Clay map. And that is the basis on which this adaptability agenda is built. You have everything from the reasonably certain to the completely uncertain and 2 pieces in the middle that you place your chips on. Once you place those chips, what I talked about earlier in terms of rehearsing each of those and building those out iteratively and not in agile sprints using the ecosystem, all of that, I think that's the way in which the adaptability comes in, so that given which way things go, you're all right. Lastly, it is about that big vision. The purpose sets the big vision. It's not that you're completely all over the place in random Brownian motion, just trying to do 50 different things. You have to set yourself purpose-driven goals. Whatever it is, Tesla says they're going to build autonomous cars and compete with renewable energy, and batteries will be the secret sauce for both. Right? I mean, that's a big, hairy, audacious goal. They've said that they'll do it in a decade, but they're doing step by step whatever they're doing. And similarly, the retailers, the banks, and everybody else has got these big goals that we will make the world a better place. That sort of thing broken up into immediate iteratives in a portfolio is the way I think many of us will actually build that adaptable future.
Hassan, your thoughts?
Yes, that's really great, Anand. So let me build on that. I'll add elements to what Anand just said. that may be a bit more practical and more technology related. So one of the things I think that organizations will have to build to be adaptable, to be agile, etc. This is what I would call the basic digital capabilities in the back end that every company, we all agree now, nobody's questioning that anymore, need to have. That digital backbone is all cloud, mobile, and data first driven. That's clearly something that any organization wants to operate moving forward needs to have that. And by the way, let's not underestimate that. Let's not just assume it's easy to build. You can just spin off some cloud processing, something on Amazon or Azure, and it works. That's not that simple. It takes actually years to build that digital agile backbone. The second element I see is that full integration of your operations, your internal operations, as well as to integration with your ecosystem and your partners, your customers, your providers or suppliers, your stakeholders, in a fully streamlined, integrated way where data flows frictionless, with no friction from one end to another, and where users can access that data and make decisions quickly based on some real-time data. I think that's the second capability that will be required if companies want to be agile. So we were giving earlier the example of how the strategic planning will need real-time data to be as agile as it's supposed to be today. Well, that too needs to be built. And again, let's not underestimate the effort in terms of resources, funding, and time it will take to get there. The third element is more on the structure and culture side of it, the people side of it, that clearly everybody knows that technology doesn't supersede or structure and culture. That culture is strategy for breakfast, and I would say it's technology for lunch. So that work on the culture side, on the org structure side, flattening the organization, giving people the authority and the power to make decisions no matter where they are within the organization. It's all these good things that we hear about and we talk about, but when it comes to practically making them and making them to work, that's a huge shift for organizations I worked for. And finally, I would say what I'm starting to see, and maybe again, just like 4 years ago, we were talking about the platforms and it was still nascent. And 4 years later, the platforms are now the drivers of every economic sector we talk about. This is something that I see nascent today that I'm quite confident it's going to become mainstream in few years from now. And it's business building. I think organizations, companies will have to learn how to build new businesses very quickly. And some of these businesses will work and some will fail, and that's fine. But that whole concept again of agile and minimum viable product and keep failing fast and trying and learning until you get it right is something that the organizations will have to learn to do internally in collaboration with partners, but they have to build that muscle internally. Today, most organizations to grow, they will go into, big measure investments of building a new capacity. Let's say manufacturing company will say, okay, I'm going to build a new plant in India or China or Brazil or whatever to increase my growth. And that's going to be my growth by entering a new market. And another way is through JVs or acquisitions, right? It's that part of the business of business development, of growth, will have to be done in an agile way. And that too, again, will have to adopt the lean startup concepts in them and bringing that VC type, tech VCs type of operating model within the organization, managing the growth options just like VCs do, and providing funding based on some milestones type of funding. Go do this and get back to me in 3 months from now. We'll see if we continue with that plan or with that project, or if we turn that off and we start something new. So that's a capability that I call it business building for now, that I think will become a prerequisite in future organizations.
All right. So in 4 years, we're going to look to see if your business building idea played out.
Let's do that.
All right. Final thoughts before we wrap up. Anais, your final closing thoughts?
No, I was listening with such great interest to you, Hassan. And I think what you said about that last concept of applying all that we discussed, not just to technology, but to business itself, and the different approaches that businesses will take towards that adaptability issue, I think is exactly right. But in my head was already turning on how I could use it. Here's my first thought. There will be things that are predictable that businesses will try to do in the way they've always done it, but the cycle times will be much shorter. So that's type A of the adaptability changes or innovations. Where there is a strong existing technology capability, whether it's, we talked about all of them, AI, cloud, et cetera, in many industries, like the one that you said, manufacturing industry, setting up new plants and JVs, et cetera, et cetera. But if I take a function and say that the manufacturing industry now makes products, but tomorrow is going to make smart products, which are going to be probably not sold, but leased and then tracked. And so it's a different way of thinking about it. That sort of innovation will be done very differently. It might use IoT, it might use 5G, it might use all the cool tech. But the way the business board or the business leadership will approach that problem versus just doing something more conventional will be different. And that's the nuance. And then finally, the ones where the technology is new and the business model is new, they will be the VC funded type initiative. The show me what you can do, iterative, which is very alien to big companies. Familiar comfort zone, but they'll just go faster and with shorter cycles. But the other things, which are tech led, like the 5G IoT example that I gave, or the ones which are more business, they would have different ways to. But great thought. I'm going to get my head around it and we'll have a chat.
Hassan, your closing thoughts.
Well, my closing thoughts, and I'll go back to how we started it. We had this conversation 4 years ago, right, Frank? Was it 4 years already?
4 years, yeah.
Time flies. So 4 years ago, and remember, 4 years ago, we were still talking about, digital is important. IT is important. Technology is important. Companies need to start thinking about it more seriously at the executive level. 4 years later, you see, our discussion was not anymore about digital is important. Nobody's questioning that, and we passed that, right? That's a check. It's done. It's approved. It's already used. What we talked about is it's important at C-level, but is it important at the board level? Now the discussion we go in one level above here. The board needs to have the right digital IQ to ask the right questions that go beyond just managing the risk of cybersecurity. It goes into managing the risk of the business, the opportunities of the business when you use digital properly. And I find that fascinating. It only took 4 years to get there when you think about it. And to your point, Frank, really, really looking forward to having this discussion again. I don't think we'll wait for another 4 years to continue on this. But I want to finish, as enthusiastic as I always been about technology, having a career in this space. Grateful that I chose this space 20 years ago. I still want to finish maybe on a word of caution that technology comes with its risks, and we are aware of the perils that comes with technology on the cybersecurity side, on AI side. We all read and heard about the dystopian scenarios that are coming our way. We all heard about how technology can be used by governments to turn themselves into more efficient surveillance on their citizens. We heard and read about how technology can be used by the armies or by defense in terrible ways. So all of this, I would say the dark side of technology, we will need to collectively keep an eye on that because this can go out of control.
So that's a great way to close. And it goes back to my introduction. It's really why leaders such as yourselves need to shape this future constructively, because the tools are there to advance human development once again, and count upon all of us to drive it there. So I want to close with that. Thank you both yet again for this great discussion. And I look forward to the next one, Hassan and Anand. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank.